friends, and welcome to this week's episode. Quantum Play Studios presents today's Harmonics with my lovely co host,
Rachel
Rachel,
Z. Hello.
and Arya. That's me. So, today Rachel and I are we have something different planned. So I am all the way across the world from Toronto. I am in the lovely land of Indonesia and the island of Bali. So Rachel
Uh,
and I were just talking, and
she's
we are like exactly,
beaming in
yes,
live from like a
yeah,
complete opposite side of the world.
yeah,
So I love
yeah. We're
that.
like 12 hours apart.
I love that.
And when we were talking about what we wanted to do for this show, we decided that we're gonna do this little cosmic exploration through our lovely solar system, our planetary brothers and sisters that hold the Earth snugly and cozily together.
I love
And so,
that.
Rachel, what's our episode called formally?
Oh, formally, I went through this and like made it a huge mouthful, but it's a cosmic um, exploration of planetary rulers and energies. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought of this also, I guess bringing this to like a local situation. I don't know if you ever had a planetarium growing up, Aria? Does it sound familiar?
I
Like a
We didn't have one, but
domed.
I went to them.
You went to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember planetariums, generally
So,
speaking. Okay, so
yeah.
uh, it's just because here in Toronto, I know there's like been a big petition to save Ontario Place because they're literally like getting rid of it and putting up like a parking garage and all this kind of stuff. And so before there was like a planetarium there, and I remember going to the planetarium when I was like 8 or 9 on a school field trip, and I remember us watching this one show where it was you were in a spaceship and you took it from the sun and you like drove it all the way out to Pluto. And it was such a trippy thing as a kid because you're laying in that planetarium and it's like IMAX screens and just like the sound, and I was like, holy cow. I was like completely enamored with like this idea of like space, and just like they would go through like how like each body, gaseous body, was in size and stuff. So we're not going to necessarily do that. We're going to be looking at these planets from a more etheric, energetic, mythological standpoint. As
Yeah,
we,
and both Rachel and I have our own relationship with astrology, and to us, and again, it's similar and it's different. Every culture, every story, every sci-fi show has its own mythos, and utilizing astrology in these deeper and deeper ways, and these deeper and deeper layers, is super fascinating to both of us. And so, part of this is what we wanted to share with each of
yeah.
the planet and the energies and the rulers. So this is going to be, I think, a slightly shorter show than normal
Yes.
because I have
Yes.
like a bunch of stuff to do in
Yes.
Indonesia while I'm here.
Thank you
So
so
should we
much for,
kick it off?
carving out a little slice of your time out in paradise to,
Yes,
beam
do
in
this.
with your intel. So I did this presentation. I'm just going to share the screen first just to make sure I have it. And before I show our lovely audience, let me just. Oh,
And while Rachel is getting that ready, we would our email, just in case you want to reach out to us,
mm-hmm.
share some of your take on what we're sharing here or even previous episodes. Our email is todaysharmonics@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Oh, yes. Okay, so
Ooh, nice presentation.
I know, right? I'm very proud of it. Well, you know what? I did this as when I first found astrology, I was telling this to my friend Sasha, who's been an astrologer for like years, and you've been an astrologer for a while as well. And I remember when we reconnected, I had found astrology and I was just still so new to it and was still just like, I called myself a baby astrologer. And I remember my boss at work at the time was like, "Are you an astrologer for babies?" I'm like, "No, I'm just." Although babies
Yeah.
could use astrologers, like mamas could
Mhm,
use, I
totally.
because I think it would help parents. I think knowing things about people's signs, especially those you're having relationships with, it can
Yeah.
help.
You know, actually, that being said, I think you see this as well. I find that there's been a lot of popularity with astrology, which is so amazing. On the difficult side, though, I find that sometimes people utilize this art and science, and it almost creates more divisiveness rather than as a tool of compassion and expansion, right?
Oh,
Like
yes.
I'm a Gemini, I'm a Mercury
Yeah.
sign. I know we're going to get into it, but again, like all of the there's a lot of like, oh, Mercury retrograde, here's all the fear, here's all of this. Like there's there's this odd narrative, and it's very prevalent. And while there's challenges, I think the challenges are invitations to compassion, are invitations to like loving yourself and seeing where you can love others more or show up or accept. So, like anything, if you have like a
Mm.
eye roll relationship with astrology, or you had an awful session, like from our creed to yours, apologies. But there's all sorts of people that use beautiful things and have some challenging lenses with it. And so ours is wonderment and love, and just coming into where this is awful and hard looking, where is the love here, where's the dance. And that's, I think, while Rachel and I do readings very differently, that's kind of the commonality, I would say. So I
That's a
just wanted to start off with
that's
that.
a that's a great way to it's a good thing to put that in front of everything as well, because I think that I agree with you. There's a lot more popularity with astrology, but at the same time, like, I joke with some of my guy friends about this because they're like, "Oh, do you want to know my birth time so you can like analyze me and like pick me apart and all this kind of stuff?" Because now it's become this like negative thing where there's
Yeah.
a lot of use in it in relationships, but not from a perspective of like I have a girlfriend of mine who literally will like message me when she meets a new guy with his birthday and like ask me to make sure that he's not horrible for her. But I'm like, I can't. There's so there are things someone asked me this in the chat. Actually, we'll get into the presentation because that's a good way to kind of get into it, because there are multiple ways you can look at a chart. And one of my favorite ways to look at a chart is through the planetary rulership and all of the stories that are entrenched with each of the planets. And I didn't know this, but when I was growing up watching Sailor Moon, I gravitated to characters that actually like made sense in terms of my astrology. And the characters that are exemplified in Sailor Moon, each of the planets that they call to for their powers and their transformations, they embody each of the energies within the planetary energies themselves. So I figure as we go through the presentation, Arya, that we'll start with the more classical interpretation of them, because I think you're actually well versed in that as well, like the classical astrological definition
Yeah.
of the planetary ruler, as well as like what signs they rule, right? And where they're exalted, where they're happy in, because I think I don't want to say like I hate it when people go like, oh, Mars is in its detriment in
I know
in a
it's
s- I-
fall.
I'm like, what? Because I'm like, I was born in that place, and what do you mean detriment? What are you talking about? But then I get it. It's more like a challenge. But I feel like if we can just like massage the NLP and have a bit more forgiveness with it, and not get so like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
are you saying that I'm
Yeah.
this? We can just learn a little bit
Yes.
more about
You know,
ourselves.
yeah, you said it perfectly. This is not a tool for judgment and analysis. It can be used for that. It's a tool for self-understanding, compassion, and hopefully understanding others as well. So as we move through this, if you know your placements, if you know your rulership, some stuff can feel a little pinchy and salty. And you know what? That's good too. That's a learning edge for all of us.
I have what is this? Oh, maybe this is a good. Every astrological sign is ruled by a planet, including the sun and moon, and some have old and new rulers as well as dual
Yes.
rulers. So,
I actually love the old rulers.
me
Like,
too, the ancient rulers.
yeah,
Yes, before the
yeah.
other planets were discovered.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
oh
just to
God.
explain that, like for a while, I think for a long time, I think Mars, Uranus, and Pluto weren't discovered. So in the time where I think Saturn was like the last planet,
Mm.
some of the current zodiac signs had old rulers, and we'll get into that.
Oh yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting to see, you know, something like I think Scorpio has Mars as the old ruler and Pluto as the new ruler, and it's like warrior and transformation, and it's
Yeah.
both. Right? When Pluto was discovered, it was like actually this works more. So yeah, that's super fun as well.
Also,
Okay,
oh yeah, let's get started. Yeah. Oh my gosh, like I'll leave my notes for when we get to each planet.
okay.
I was about to say something about Uranus, but we'll get into that. I have like planets in the pantheon. The mythology of each planet can be tied to the energies of that planet and vice versa. And so we'll like fly through, right, our little solar system. Like, oh, like we're going to start. You know what? We're going to start with the sun. And I don't have a slide
Ooh,
for the sun. So
okay.
that might be
I
something.
like this slide.
Yeah, this is perfect to start to kind of ground ourselves in space. But like, look at how little Earth is
Yeah, so
comparatively.
true.
And I love how like you can see here how like sister like Earth and Venus are. They definitely
Yeah.
like sisters. But do you have anything to say about the sun to start with? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much. Okay. If I
let's
can
let's try to like
conclude,
get condensed because we're going to talk about this through somewhat of a Sailor Moon lens because as Arya said at the top of this show that each show, each story, sci-fi show, everything has a mythology tied to it. So we'll start with a classical, and then we'll look at Sailor Moon. But there is no Sailor Sun.
there is no Sailor
There
Sun.
is no
Yes.
Sailor Sun.
That was one of my questions. So to me, the sun is our life-giving, it, it's a very prominent aspect of our consciousness. It's like if you think of the sun within yourself, that's
Mm.
like that is your conscious mind. Like I'm here looking at my phone and Rachel, and I have this beautiful scenery outside. All of that to me is like my sun looking at the world. One of the things I love about the sun with astrology is actually the magnetic principles, right? Because the
Mm.
entire solar system revolves, like moves around the sun. So for each of us, and this is not, again, you can look at this as like completely selfish or self-involved, but like my life revolves around me, as it
Of
should.
course it should.
And
That's not
Rachel's life revolves around
self-involved.
her.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there is, I think, a lot of times, maybe especially with women, there's a selfishness associated with that. And so we kind of try and deny our son or make it about somebody else. And this is where some of the distortions of experience come in. And again, this
Mm-hmm.
is not specific to women. I'm sure men do it as well. It just happens to be more common. And so the sun is, to me, being in the absolute joy and pleasure of being the center of your own solar system.
Ah,
Acknowledging that there's other
love
stars
that. Yes.
and like we get to play in the magnetic principles of all of that. And that's actually what holds the Milky Way together.
Mm-hmm.
All of these stars with all of these planets around them, and everyone has their own world that revolves around them, and everyone is part of a larger galaxy and a larger universe and a larger dimension and a larger multiverse.
That's
So
so.
that to
Yes.
me is the sun in our consciousness.
Oh, very succinct. I love that. That your Gemini is showing. um, I love the sun. The sun is actually the first planet to enter my chart, and it's in my first house, and so it's very like I.
Mine too.
Yeah, I know that. I know that, right? So like the sun is a very important part of who I think we are too, like personally. The sun is important in everybody's chart just because traditionally with your horoscope, right? It's your sun sign that you're looking at. And my sweet Kevin, my hubby, now when he says he doesn't like birthday, he likes solar return. He doesn't. He's like, you're only born once, right? You're really celebrating when the sun came back around. And I'm like,
Yes.
true that. You also have like a Saturn return day as well, right? So
Yes.
things to
Yes.
kind of note as you realize that you, when you took your first breath into this existence, have a very specific placement of all these different planets that is completely unique to you. And all those different ways that those angles create aspects is how those energies bounce off each other are all specific to you. And to your point about the sun being the thing that pulls it all together is that, right? It's like the gasoline, the fuel that like empowers all the other aspects of you. So
Yeah, I knew for me, when I sat with my chart for the first time, I completely ignored the sun. I was too much. So I was
really
like, I literally started with Mercury. And it was the funny thing, right? Like it's sort of the
interesting.
start and end of us, right? Like when you think of a solar return, so like whenever what we would traditionally understand is whenever your birthday was last year, or whenever your birthday is this year, it's the same day. But everything that has happened, like entire systems have moved. And then you
Now
come
Pluto's
back
not
to
in
the
the same
place.
place, right? Like
Yeah. and it's really your design. Like each of us have this cosmic design, which is the moment of our birth, where all the stars, the planets, and the asteroids are.
Yeah.
And that design doesn't repeat itself, but the sun, like the earth, returns to that same point. And it's almost like, to me, the sun is like the wisdom of the spiral, where you're like, oh, I'm at the same place, but you're not. You're at one layer out or one layer in,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
your
It's like a
perspective is
song,
slightly
right?
different.
Like if you come back to the same chorus or like you have a
Yeah,
breakdown, it's not the same breakdown, but it's got the same. I heard who
yeah.
forgot who said it. Like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? So
Yes,
it,
yes, exactly. Yes. So
yeah.
that's the sun.
Okay, perfect. So let's get into we're gonna fly from the sun, and we're gonna end up on Mercury. Yeah. So oh my gosh, I love my little slides. I have
They're
like notes
beautiful.
here, but we're gonna bounce off of it. So I'll just read this out loud. That Hermes, I actually have a personal. I love Hermes as a god. I don't know why, but like I love him. Like, he's mischievous. He's like a little bit sassy, and he's like the bestie to like Venus. You know, he's got it's. I don't know, like just vibe wise, I love Hermes.
Good guy.
Messenger of the gods, right? So I do have Hermes wings, like the winged ankles. Like I have that tattooed on me. I got that tattooed on my birthday in 2020, actually. The ruler of both Gemini and Virgo. I have also heard that Virgo could be ruled by Chiron. I will leave that
I
for you
have heard that
yeah,
too.
as an opinion as well. I would say Mercury in the natal chart is about communication, intellect, memory. I include magic in that as well as medicine. I think is
Yeah.
involved there. The caduceus, that symbolism, is tied to Mercury as well. Mercury is usually within 28 degrees of the sun, so there is a strong influence of Mercury on how one presents themselves out to the world. I love this image I have of this Mercury, of this Hermes, right?
Yes.
Ah, he's so hot in this. um, the glyph of Mercury has the winged cap that also references Mercury taking 88 days to circle the sun. It is the fastest planet in the solar system. So, uh, Arya, do you have anything? So you said that you went to Mercury first when you first looked at your chart. What did you find?
Um, oh, yeah, that was interesting. So, I mean, astral travel in itself is interesting. So I was in a meditative state, and I honestly, I was really struggling. It was when I was really unwell. And I think I was struggling with not feeling like my mind had anything to do with the rest of me. So I had a
Mm.
very disjointed association. And Mercury controls the mental
Mm-hmm.
realm, or not controls, but it is associated
Yeah.
with our mind, our thoughts, our belief systems, right? And so, obviously, if you have a fractured idea of your mind, then your communication, how you present yourself, how you perceive and receive the world, I mean, basically, like you're effed, which was where I found myself. And so, I did this like astral travel meditation.
Mm.
And it's funny, right? For every planet that we see a side of it because we never see the side that we don't see,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, the planets revolve, but like you never know what you're seeing. But the part that's viewable to Earth is always not like we can never behold the whole, right? Like
Mm.
that's a big thing with astrology. There's like the dark side of the moon, there's the dark side of every planet. And so I think I was surprised because I was in this awful state. And when I astral traveled to Mercury, I had anticipated that it would be more awfulness, but there was this peace and quietude that is that I felt was embedded in this very fast, speedy, the planet associated with alchemy, so close to the sun. And it's almost like it's so close to the sun that Mercury has to really maintain itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so tiny,
Yeah.
right? Like it's tiny, it's the closest to the sun. And so it really has to maintain itself. And so part of
Hold its
Mercury's
own. Yeah. Yeah.
it has to hold its own, and it doesn't hold its own in stubbornness, right? The
Mm.
part of Mercury that faces the sun, every whatever however long the days are in Mercury, it just melts, and it like all of this stuff happens, and all of that turns to ice when Mercury faces Venus,
Yeah. Truly
right?
duality
And
there.
so there's duality, and that is the essence of alchemy, which is where
Mm.
magic comes from. So
Mm-hmm.
as part of mercurial balance is the understanding that we can melt and have pressure and like be literally like 2 seconds away from the sun, and we can be serene, quiet ice all at the same time, held in one planet, which is how our minds work, right? Like I'm seeing things, all my sense organs are like bringing in stuff. And then there's the part of us that in the mind that is synthesizing, perceiving, composting,
Mm.
receiving, giving. This is
Mm.
to me like the understanding Mercury is understanding the mental basis. The one of the Hermetic principles is the
That.
universe is one, like the mental.
And the
And so
Hermetic
the
principles.
Hermetic
Hermes.
principles come to us from Thoth, which is the ancient Greek version of Hermes, or like
The Egyptian
aspect of
equivalent.
Hermes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Hellenistic, I like to say, because that's when they like
yes,
fuse
Hellenistic
those
is a
two kind
better
of.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this notion of like where the mentalism, and how we are perceiving it, and how we are showing up in it, that's all ruled by Mercury. And I'm a Gemini, so it's my ruling sign.
Is your
So
Mercury
Mercury is
also in
my Mercury is in Taurus. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, in the
Ah.
12th house. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well, then, yeah.
Yeah. And so the one last thing I'd love to say about Mercury is that ever quite frequently, so every 3 or 4 months, from the perspective of Earth, Mercury looks like it's moving backwards just because of how momentum is. This
Mm.
is what's commonly called a Mercury retrograde. And
Mm.
if you look at a lot of astrology around those times, there's a lot of people who are like,
Scared of it?
there's like hate and
Yeah.
aggression, right? And this is the difficulty, because that is a perception. If we
Mm.
perceive challenges is what comes forth to us, because this is the mental construct. So understanding that always alchemy is about like balancing opposing, transforming something into something else. This is also how we can perceive times where we want to act, we want to do, we want to sign contracts. And have we
Mm.
dotted our I's and crossed
Cross
our
our
T's?
T's. Yeah.
Like take like there's sometimes the fastest way is to be slow, take a day, confirm everything is good, and then we can all move together well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I love
Like, so
that.
Mercury
Yeah.
is also about efficiency, like mental efficiency. And that is a misunderstood and often bypassed aspect of the planet. We think that I'm going to do 20 things today, but what about we do 3 things well? And then it actually helps with our other 17 things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's how I
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
So on to you, Rachel.
Oh my goodness. Ah, like you said so much good stuff there.
Mm,
There's so
I'm
much
very
to,
Mercury.
oh, you are. Yes. And I'll bring this to like Sailor Moon because uh her so I'll say this about Sailor Mercury. I didn't like her at all. She was nerdy and like then I realized I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a lot like her. So that's probably why I'm like kind of annoyed with her, right? So in Sailor Moon, they're all reincarnations of planetary princesses. And Sailor Moon is like she rules the Silver Millennium Kingdom with her Earth Prince, Tuxedo Mask. And when this terrible thing happens, this evil queen takes over it, her mother sends her to Earth, her and her friends, to be reincarnated. So they're asleep, they wake up, and Mercury is the first Sailor Scout to wake up after the moon. Um, so it's something to consider. The moon and Mercury are very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very close friends, and people wouldn't think of them as being very close friends, and people like don't understand why Sailor Moon and Sailor Mercury even are friends, but they're close because they're they get each other on a level that like I don't think the others do, and it's because
I
like
agree.
yeah, right, like lunar to be lunar is like Mercury's very much like supportive of that, and even if I think of the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris, how much Thoth helps Isis out, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're friends, and so a confident someone she can talk to, and Isis is a very lunar goddess as well, so the friendship between those energies is there, right? Your memory and emotion is very lunar, but then that's also like can be mental too,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
with Sailor Mercury, she's like the smartest, she's the brains of the team. She's like in computer science. She's very smart, very nerdy, like loves like mathematics. She's always the one trying to map their time travel if they're going to be doing that. So that's all in Sailor Mercury. She also deals with her powers are actually aquatic. She makes bubbles. Like she just like
Oh,
yeah, like her bubbles are like
very nice.
star bubbles, like attack kind of situation. So I don't know
Mm.
why I don't know where that kind of actually, you know what? It does kind of make sense if you think of what like bubbles can be on
Well,
like a
air and water. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Something
so
like that.
something like
Yeah.
that. So that's where Sailor Mercury kind of fits with the team and her relationship with Sailor Moon. Yeah, yeah,
I love that. I love that.
yeah.
Also, even Mercury in Greek myth, he's
Mm.
often friends with all the goddesses, like the different
Yeah,
deities and
yeah.
all of this stuff, in a different way than the other guy goddess, than the other gods, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
it's not the
yeah,
same relationship as like Aries and Apollo. Mercury's like,
yeah,
yeah. So I love that ability.
yes.
Okay, that's so awesome.
Okay, so we're past Mercury, and also like if you have when you if you do your chart, if you have your chart read, like Mercury where it sits is going to give you clues about the flavor of how you not say how you yeah I guess how you think, how you like how you process the world, the lens
Yeah,
of
and it's an
which
in and out, like how you think and how you process the world.
yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it for sure. One of the other things that Mercury rules is our relationship to technology, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously a big thing these days. Rachel was just telling me there was this big Microsoft outage,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
phones were grounded and like banking, like, all of this stuff. So, um, because it's so mental, our, there's also like frequency, um, electric pulses,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the electric pulses in our brain and our body, as well as in our technology. So that relationship. So if you're someone who really hates technology, struggles with it, fights it, or you're really addicted, to me, Mercury, the placement of Mercury in the house and in the zodiac holds some clues as to what the
Mm.
problem is and also what the solution is.
Totally. That's good. That's something to look at for sure. Okay, so we're gonna fly past Mercury, and we're gonna go towards Venus. Ah,
This is Rachel's
I
favorite planet.
love Venus. I love Venus so much. Me, because I'm a Taurus and I'm ruled by Venus. My hubby's a Libra, also ruled by Venus. We love Venus. So, but she's Aphrodite in Greek Roman myth, goddess of love and beauty, ruler of Taurus and Libra. And she, in the natal chart, rules relationships, both love and platonic. So all relationships, even relationships that you have with anything, really, if you think about
Yeah.
it, anything you love, as well as how you love, depending on the position, and also how you need to be loved, how you want to receive that type of love. Uh, Venus is the planet of beauty, art, poetry, luxuries, but also love, unions, romance, marriage, and partnerships. And Venus is sometimes known as Earth's sister due to their cosmic similarities. And in Sailor Moon, you can see here, she also has one of the other cats in the show. And in Sailor
Oh,
Moon, actually, Sailor Venus is already awake before Sailor Moon.
oh, interesting.
She's
So
already
she
like a
doesn't wait till
celebrity. She's already like a Sailor V celebrity. And so like Sailor
Oh,
Moon's
I
always like, "Oh
see.
my gosh, I love Sailor V so much." And like almost idolizes her, and then she finds out that she's actually a Sailor Scout for real. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Awesome.
Arthi, your relationship with Venus. Oh,
So
yeah.
Venus for me is, I think it's in my 12th. Yeah. So I have a complicated Venus for
Oh,
me.
oh, I have a
So
complicated placement with I have I'll talk about that after you go first.
yeah, yeah. Because I think it would help actually if maybe if we shared a little bit about
Yes.
where it is in our chart.
Yeah.
So I'm a 12th house Venus, and the 12th house is associated with what is unseen and sort of like the occult and mysticism, but it's also, where we imprison ourselves a little bit in our minds and in our subconscious.
Mhm.
And so I have a Venus placement in the 12th house in Gemini. And so there's this like,
Ooh.
so there's a lot of tension for me around it sometimes,
Mm.
especially when it comes to love. And like Rachel knows because I complain about this all the time. But
No,
yeah,
you
that's
don't.
okay, maybe a little bit. So Venus to me and all of the so this is okay, I'm gonna start by saying this. A lot of us have a complicated relationship with love, often because I feel like I think you and I talked about this previously. In English, the word love
Mm,
encapsulates everything. Like
yeah.
my love for coffee, my love for Indonesia, my love for my soulmate, my love for my close friend, right? Like
My
all of this we have
family,
one
like,
word.
yeah, just one
Yeah,
word
like
for.
everything, right? Like maybe I love money. Like
Hmm.
it's kind of it's the same word. And so it sometimes it doesn't capture a lot of the nuances. Of course, a lot of us maybe have traumas and distortions. And so there's like idealism, there's hatred, like there's all of this stuff. There's a lot of like push-pull dynamics. So if we put all that aside for a second, um, the planet Venus to me, if I'm not allowed to use the word love, I would say the planet Venus is
Mm.
animated by connection and by
Mm.
sorting out levels and layers of intimacy with everything, with anything. You can be eating your favorite food, and like you take a bite, you have this taste, and you're suddenly like, oh my god, this is the best
Yeah,
thing
that is
ever.
very Venus. Yeah, just
So Venus, to be empleasured by the things that you love. So this
yeah.
is where some of the, to me, the like, this is like priestess wisdom, right? Like the feminine aspect of us, the yin aspect of us, is nourished by beauty. And I don't mean this from a place of vanity. I
Mm.
mean that like crawling into bed and just like deeply like tucking ourselves in, eating something, like curling up into like the arms of your lover, all of these things, they open and soften something in us. That is food to the feminine spirit of every being, even like a dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you scratch their head and they're just
Yep.
like, wow, or whatever, or like a cat. So so Venus to us is kind of how we feed ourselves, how we nourish ourselves emotionally with all aspects of connection.
I
And
love
I think
that.
to me, that's what I call love.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, you hit it on the head. Like, are you sure you don't have you have Taurus placement, so that makes sense to me. Actually, like how you just described, like just when you eat something so good, like I like
Mhm.
you're like eating something so good. I'm like, I'm gonna be so sad when this is over, but like I'm just like, but in the moment, just feeling how it all feels, the textures, the smells, all of it, just being in like your five senses is very like Venetian, right?
Yes.
In terms of Sailor Venus and Sailor Moon, that mythology, and I've realized like I'm looking at my time. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to like hustle through the
We might
planets.
have to do this as a part one and
Yeah,
part
we
two.
can do that actually. We might have to wrap after Sailor Mars. I think that might
Yeah,
work.
let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of Sailor Venus, like she has a cat named Artemis. Obviously, like Artemis is the goddess, a moon goddess. But Venus is she's very self assured. She's very pretty. She's like boy crazy with her best friend Sailor Jupiter. Yeah. So Sailor Jupiter and Sailor Venus are bestie friends, but that kind of makes sense because
I like these friends, right? Like,
right.
cause
It
yeah,
makes
that's
sense, right?
interesting.
Because Jupiter is actually
Yeah.
exalted. I feel like Jupiter and Venus are very benevolent planets
Yes.
in the chart. Like
Yes.
Mars and Saturn get kind of like a bad rap, but like in terms of like placements of Venus, they can.
They're bros together, Saturn and
Yeah,
Mars.
yeah, yes. So in terms of this, like she's the one who has their powers first. She expresses herself very easily, but she's also like a true friend to everybody. She doesn't have an ego, even though people would think that she does. All her powers are all very love, light, beauty, sparkles,
Mm.
glitter, and like all of this like very girly stuff. And so like I resonate with all like the Venus things.
Yeah.
I although me myself personally, I do also have Venus in the 12th house, except it's in Aries. And it Mercury and Venus for me are very close together in the 12th house in Aries. So we have
Mine
like a
too.
yeah, we have like a similar thing but just like slightly different like
Slightly different.
lens on
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
where the Aries in it makes me a bit more like it helps to kind of like power through things. So I
Yeah.
found how
Yeah.
it exemplified
Exactly.
in me is that I've always found that I was like the one who would like stand up to bullies at school or like
Right.
defend people, like be friends with people that wasn't popular to be friends with, because I was friends with everybody kind of
Yeah,
situation.
I would say from my perspective, like just knowing you now, the other way this shows up for you is, is this. So like Rachel has this production company like with her husband, and she's like getting all of us, like her friends, to express and
Yeah.
like sort of like do all the info, show us all the infrastructure to sort of like accept our diva sides. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean like express the side that's ready to be expressed. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
that to me is a little of your Aries.
Oh, oh, thanks for that. I just got a little tingle as you were saying that, because that's totally what I like. I just everyone
And you love
deserves,
it.
yes,
This is
everyone
the thing,
deserves to
you love it.
feel beautiful. I like
Yeah.
Marilyn had a beautiful quote, but she's like, you just deserve to feel pretty. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you stick to yourself, like, and it's fun too when other people see you too, right? And it's just
Yeah.
that relationship with beauty, with them, with yourself, and as you're like how you express like loving and being with yourself, loving just hanging out with you is
Yeah.
is awesome, right? And it's like seeing yourself in the mirror, like, you look great. Yeah. Like, I do.
One of the beautiful aspects that I know I had to heal many years ago with Venus was my relationship with other women,
Mm,
right? Because there's a lot of in a lot of cultures and just in everyday society, we grow up in this aspect of patriarchy where women compete with one another,
yeah.
just like everyone else. In ways that we're competing with everyone, and so the aspect of Venus where we are accepting sisterhood and like shining in our light and then shining in each other's.
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
Like
yes.
that
Love
that
that.
is yeah, that is amazing. All right.
Okay. So we are at time at 9:30. Do you want to do Sailor Mars, or do you want to wrap here? I will leave
Um
you.
let's do Sailor Mars
Okay.
and then let's do Sailor Mars quickly because I think
Okay.
that's a juicy place to end.
Yes. Actually,
And
yes.
then yes, we'll end there and then we'll do a part 2 where we'll continue this little trip across the solar system. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, for the planets that we've covered, if you have questions, we would love to hear from you. Our email, once again, is todaysharmonics@gmail.com. And if you have questions for the planets we're going to do next Friday at our next episode, like hit us up, ask us questions, and maybe we'll even share a little bit more about our charts and how Rachel offers sessions of astrology. I kind of weave it in with other work,
Mm.
but we're happy to share some of that too. So
Yeah.
please let us know, email us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, because I think
All
that
right.
both of us leverage like astrology in our offerings. So there's,
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
yeah, we definitely do. And I do think that there's a level of astrology in everything, anyways, regardless if people believe in it or not.
Because we're all stardust.
That's right. We are. We are all star beings, and it's just, yeah. Anyways, all right. So Mars. So Sailor Mars. When I was playing Sailor Moon, I was playing Sailor Mars. So I was, yeah, I played Sailor Mars, correct. But which kind of makes sense now when I think about it, because I do have a lot of Aries placements. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I grab it. The only reason why I really played Sailor Mars was, I loved her, similar to how you were saying you liked Emma Frost and like Yennefer. It's these characters who are just kind of. She's a priestess in the show actually as well. So at a Shinto temple with her grandfather. So she's very different than the rest of the girls, and she's also a lot more like, her friendship with Sailor Moon is very like, they fight a lot, but she loves her so much. So it's like this.
But
Yeah.
that's the moon and Mercury.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the moon and Mars.
Yes,
Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, it's like a very
for
tense thing.
love.
Yeah, but when push comes to shove, Mars will be there for her, and like will tell everyone else to like back off. So, uh in the case of Aries, I love Aries as a god too for whatever reason. I don't know why, but you can see him in the picture I chose, him in his like 8-pack and like looking all
Yeah.
warrior like. Ruler of Aries and the ancient ruler of Scorpio. So that's something to kind of look at as well, because that can explain why Scorpio sometimes feels like it's a hot planet. I don't know why, like, there's like some fieriness, that intensity that's involved with Scorpio. And Mars is the planet of energy, action, and desire. It represents the beginning of all beginnings. It is our first breath and our first scream, being the one responsible for the body that we have and the incarnation that we are in at the moment. A strong symbol of unchangeable fate and karmas. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, I don't have strong Aries placements. I think the nodes of the moon are currently in Aries and Libra, right?
Yes, yeah, yes,
Like
you are
for all of us.
correct. Yes. So,
Yeah.
like, the nodes of
So
destiny, like, the head of the
the
dragon is
destiny,
currently in Aries. I look at that as, like, everyone cultivating their inner warrior, right?
fire, identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Aries to me, so in the northern hemisphere, which is funny because I'm currently, I think, in the southern hemisphere, but
Yeah.
in the northern hemisphere, Aries is springtime, right? Like when you have the spring solstice, that's the first sign. So that whole first breath that Rachel just read out,
Yeah.
um, spring, like you were doing all the stuff
Yeah.
underground as a plant, and now you're sprouting out,
That.
and you're just gonna go towards
I'm
the sun.
ready.
That's that's Aries, right? So certainly there's a lot of warrior aspects. I love that Sailor Mars is has this priestess because like to me the like a priestess of the fire realm is very different than all the other priestesses,
Yes.
right? Because you
Yeah.
have to hold and maintain this, fire, which is a very, I mean, every element has its own special thing. But yeah, I think maybe because fire is the hardest one for me, I have a lot more reverence for people who can
Yeah.
hold that. And
Yeah.
so I have heavy Scorpio placements. My
Mm.
Mars is in Scorpio, actually, along with my Saturn.
Mm.
And so I really struggled with health. It was in the sixth house for me.
Because
And
I guess
so
that's something to talk about too. Like Mars is kind of related to like your physical like
it is your physical health, your
embodiment.
vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your vitality.
Yeah.
So I had so for me it was like autoimmune, gut, hormones, and everything was really thrown off and in like not great. And then I found out this Mars and Scorpio placement in the sixth house, Mars and Saturn in Scorpio in the sixth. And I was like, oh, basically I'll have ill health my whole life. And again, I was in a bad place. So that's kind of how I was seeing it. But here's the beauty of it. And Rachel, like, I love this thing you said, right? Like this fighting with Sailor Moon, because in the end, and it's so important to have a compassionate lens on astrology
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have like things you hate about your chart, which is also things you hate about yourself, maybe. And the way to accept it, the way to heal it, lies in the exact same spot.
Yeah.
So for me, Mars in Scorpio was like you are staying at this superficial level, and it is time. So my Mars in Scorpio invites me deeper, like kind of like more
Mm-hmm.
down versus up, right? And like in my planets, like in my chart, a lot of my planets, like 7 of my planets are retrograde of the 9.
Mm.
So for me, it's a lot about the freedom and the propulsion of going inward. And then once I'm inward, then I can more easily. So, like, all of my efforting is inward, and
Mm.
then the outward stuff happens easily. And this was a big teaching,
Mm-hmm.
a very difficult teaching for me with my Mars in Scorpio.
Oh man, that's a. I feel like you would feel things very intensely, like all through your body when it comes to
I
emotions.
I do. Yeah, because Mars is
Yeah.
also blood and vitality, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for several years of my life I was really depressed because I couldn't allow and act. So it's one thing to feel things, which I can do, but then what do I do with these
Mm-hmm.
feelings?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In
And
your
then
body,
when there's
yeah, and
yeah. So
yeah.
embodiment is one thing, and then knowing what to do with them. And again, this is the alchemy of Mars. Like to me, this is the Mars as a warrior, because for me, my Mars energy is actually very different than yours. You have a lot of I'm going to show up in the world, and you have a lot of the solar priestess like aspects within you. For me, my warrior is the one that is like standing at the gate protecting what's inside.
Oh, you're so Sailor
So
Pluto.
he's not a so mine happens to and like
Oh my
when
gosh,
I
I had to
didn't
share.
know
I have to
that.
share something. Actually, I just thought about
Hmm,
it. In terms of Sailor Moon and what you were just saying, because because, well, we won't get to Sailor Pluto just yet, but that will probably end out this whole this two-part series. But in the Sailor Moon mythology, Sailor Pluto is actually Sailor Mars's daughter from the future.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to
Right?
me.
But she's older than Sailor Mars in the events of the book. But in the whole timeline, she's
Yeah.
actually Sailor Mars's daughter. But
Wow.
she was always
Yeah,
chosen to
there's
be Sailor
something there.
Pluto. Yeah, because time isn't linear, right? So it's just she's always
Yeah.
once she becomes Sailor Pluto, she's always Sailor Pluto. But she was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
she
I
yes,
see
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And Pluto is Scorpio's new ruler, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot. And again, this is just how this is, I think, the difficulty with Mars. We often have these limited notions of what a warrior is. And I remember this, the first conversation I had with you, Rachel, when you were like, I'm writing this book series for the Dragon
And you're
Warriors. I'd
in
love for
it.
you to be part of it. And I'm like, oh, but I'm not a warrior. Sorry. Like, I'm
Like
like way in the back. You know, I'm not in the front.
like what? But of course you're a warrior because there are different ways in which we fight.
Yes. And
So
because of how Rachel sees the world and a lot of her Venus energies and a lot of her like sun, solar, fire aspects, she's able to see and she's very clearly able to look at other people and be like, oh, you're a warrior in a different way. Whereas that wasn't something I was able to do. So I fought a lot with my Mars, with my warrior, simply because I was trying to make it to be like hers. But mine serves a very different purpose,
and we need
right?
that
So my
purpose to
entire
be
notion of like,
served. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and this is the whole magic of like when a planet is direct and when a planet is retrograde, which I know we're not going to get into, but again, like to me, the secrets of this lie in the placement of the planet in your chart
Mm-hmm.
and like where it is, what house, you know, what degree angle, all that fun stuff, which is like I think why you and I love astrology so much.
Yes, it's like a big puzzle to yourself and other people, I think, as well. Because someone asked me on my comic book read once that do I think astrology is being like fatalistic, in the sense of like, oh, this is your chart, and so like this is like what you're like destined, like destiny being kind of like, oh, you don't really have free will or choice based on the fact that you're this, so like you're meant to be that. I'm like, no, it's not that. It's more about you have multiple timelines available to you, infinite actually. But there are in that infinity, there's probably more tracks, more spaces, more areas that are probably going to have more flow for you in the
Mhm.
stories that you're going to tell in your life, and probably
Yeah.
ones that others would like for you to fulfill for them, so that their story also goes the way that the entire cosmos would like it to go. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually just noticed the beauty of the pictures you chose, right? Because Mars can be the warrior with an eight pack, and Mars can be
The
the
priestess, yeah.
the priestess.
Oh, and she has
And
two crows. Oh my
they're
gosh.
both Mars.
I forgot to say, like, she has two crows as well, Sailor Mars, before we flip to the ending screen. She has two crows that are the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, or so two
Yes,
black
yes,
birds, right?
yes.
And so if we think of like blackbird symbology as being like, you know, messengers between realms in a different kind
Yes,
of way. So yeah.
brilliant. Your last line, a strong symbol of unchangeable fate and karmas. What do you mean by that?
I did this presentation probably about 2 years ago now. I don't know what I meant about it then.
Yeah.
But now, if I were to look at this, I would probably revise it because there isn't such a thing as unchangeable fate. I don't
Okay, that's
believe.
actually why I was asking.
Yeah, there
Okay,
isn't
perfect.
such a
Mm.
thing because um, I think that's probably where people get into trouble when looking at Mars in a detrimental position, right? Like,
Yeah,
I did Marilyn Monroe's chart and she had Mars in Pisces. Now, that's
right.
a difficult place for Mars to be. The way I read it was that it was almost like you have this planet of fire. And I feel that because, Mars being in the 12th house has some similar kind of energies, right? But in Pisces, it's almost like your dreams, you almost feel like you can't ever get the fire to start on your dreams. And they always will feel like they'll be someone else's. You're going to fulfill someone else's dreams, and your own actions, your own drives don't feel like your own ever. And she was like,
Yeah.
and
And she was that.
and
Yeah.
she was that, right? She didn't get to express, like Marilyn, she disconnected almost like Norma Jean, and there was Marilyn Monroe. And Marilyn Monroe was all these things, but then like all the stuff that she actually wanted, all the things that really drove her, she never actually truly got to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
So yeah, sad,
Yeah,
right?
those are hard placements for sure. And they serve a very specific purpose in your life if you
Yes,
can figure out what it is. And every planet has like a higher and a lower octave, right? Like the bass tone and the higher tones of it. And so I think the beauty of going through life, like, is you can figure out, like, okay, this is the energy and these are the low tones and the high tones,
that's exactly it.
right?
That is
Yeah.
exactly it.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we are at time.
We are at time. Yes, a little bit over, but not too
A little bit
bad.
over.
Not too bad. We will
Yeah.
continue our journey through the cosmos as we go. Um, I don't know if you want to do that next week, my friend, but
Yeah, let's
or
do it next week. It'll
yeah.
be two together. Yeah.
Okay,
No, it's
perfect.
good. It's so good.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
perfect. Part
again,
two.
please reach out to us. Our email is todaysharmonics@gmail.com. It's harmonics in plural. So
Yes, not
harmonics
one
with an
harmonic, two harmonics,
yeah,
two or more.
two or more. So please email us and let us know what you think of this episode. We're like trying a whole bunch of things. Like we're doing cosplay, we're doing some of
Yeah,
these. Rachel was like, "You're away in Indonesia, so like we'll do this other thing." And she loves Sailor Moon.
I do. Yes,
So
yeah, and I do want to like bring. It's also just a way of providing context, right? Because I
yes.
remember like when like I try to teach my hubby astrology because like it's I think it's just important for people to know stuff about themselves. You know, cuz I
Yeah.
for a long time I did like I just felt like I was just some weird person, but then I like realized that I met other people with similar placements to me and was like, "Wow, like
We're all in it together.
you get it too." It's just I'm not nuts, right? So like you it's such a beautiful like a beautiful way to like connect with others and then also have some forgiveness, I think, for other people's character arcs. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
And you
So,
know what? I think I hear I hear this very often. People get really overwhelmed, right? Because you have all these planets and you have all these moons. And sure, astrology is really overwhelming, but um, like, I actually like that we're splitting this episode into two because we've
yeah.
done all the personal planets,
Yes. Yes.
obviously the moon, and then the outer planets will be later. And like, you can spend a whole year just exploring one planet placement in your chart.
Yeah.
Most people don't have the patience or the interest for that. But again, like, if you're struggling with something, like, have a look at it. So actually, I did that. I did follow the moon for 3 years. I had a lunar diary. And
Wow.
this is so funny. Like, I never took a single course in astrology. I just had this lunar diary and I would map out everything. And then on the solstices, I'd like create these patterns. And I'm like, oh, this is what this felt like on this day. And that's actually how I learned astrology over a period of 3 years, using the
Huh.
lunar calendar as a base, and then being like, okay, there's this retrograde, Saturn moved, blah blah blah, and seeing how it felt in my body, in my energy, in my dreams, and in my health.
I love that. That's very that Mars and Scorpio, I feel like too as well. Like
Yeah.
because like like feeling out like
Yeah.
what the entire like I don't like the word collective. Maybe that's like homework for us to think of another word for it, but
Yeah.
just like the psyche of the all and
Yeah.
feeling yeah,
Yeah.
feeling that out.
It's this easy thing. Like, everyone's like, oftentimes if you're struggling with something, someone's like, oh, are these your emotions? Maybe they're not yours,
Mm.
which is super fair. And that's like a great reminder. And as perfectly embedded, like, aspects of consciousness, it's also not fruitful to spend your whole life separating yourself from other, like, that's like fruit to me, that's fruitless, right? It's not going to work. So we have to figure out another equation
Yes,
to like
yes.
feeling each other, not letting, not, like, even if, I don't know if not letting is a good word, like, because we affect each other. We
That's it.
do.
Yeah. And I think that's a dance, right? Where it's like we don't have, there's no one right way of doing any of this kind of stuff. There's no one right way to interface with being, let's say, those of you out there who are Pisces, 12th house, 8th house, people who are just very much in tune with the unseen realms.
Yes.
My sister's not. But she's not. But like, that's the thing though. Like, there's those of us there who, like, that's why you and I think, like, people don't think that we would, like, maybe connect on things that we do connect on. And I think it's like that
Mhm.
12th house stuff too, because it's just like, oh, because in the dream world, there's all this other stuff. And I'm getting a
Yeah.
whole bunch of messages and ringing my ears right now as I'm talking about this. But like, it's just, I think all of you out there who deal with the unseen stuff,
Yeah.
astrology offers a really great way to talk about it.
Yes.
That's just
Yeah.
yeah, that's I'll
Yeah.
put that out there because that's at really like what that's given to me a lot of is just a lot of ways to communicate just stuff that is like so impossible to really just talk about, but be like, oh, okay, it's because of these energies of the planets that provides so much more like we
Context.
yeah, context in our conversation now that we both understand what those planets mean. So now
Yeah.
that we have that with other people, more people that know about it, we can have more fruitful and like deeper conversations as it comes to stuff that is hard to talk about.
I love that. That is a beautiful place to end because we are all our own inner mythos and we're
Yeah.
figuring out what these
As we
stories
go.
are as they evolve. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Rachel, thank you for organizing all of this.
No worries. And I know we're over and I so I will wrap up the call. Until next time, my friends. Same bad time, same bad channel. Till then, bye.
Bye.